uncomfortable? And if so, why? I've been thinking about it, and since I can't really have an interactive conversation with you guys, I thought I would just sort of interview a friend of mine who's been thinking and researching patriotism for quite a while.
Hey. Hello.
Hey, Robin. Hi. Thanks for dropping into my Zoom.
Yeah, no problem. I was just in the other room.
Petting the dog. This is my partner, Robin Scherer, and I have a question for you, Robin.
Yeah?
Are you a patriot?
Oh, yeah, actually I am a patriot, although I have to say I'm uncomfortable with that word these days. I mean, it seems like patriotism seems to be a worship of symbols and really offices instead of values.
Well, I'm curious, have you always felt this way, or is this something new?
Well, as a matter of fact, no, I haven't always felt this way. Seems like when I was a kid and a young adult, it was much more easy to be aligned with the idea of patriotism. I mean, shoot, I grew up in a middle-class New Jersey small town, colonial town. And back then in the 60s and 70s, opportunities seemed endless. I mean, you know, every day at school, we recited the Pledge of Allegiance, and I remember putting my hand over my heart, and I just was completely comfortable. You know, every year at Memorial Day, we used to ride our red, white, and blue ribbon bicycles in the parade. The whole community came out.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
It was fun. And again, we were all patriots. I mean, it was an exciting time.
Yeah, we were doing a lot back then, especially with science and technology.
Absolutely. Americans Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin planted an American flag on the moon back in 1969.
In July. Actually, they did it just because I had been born. I'd just been born. It was so nice of them. It was
a big celebration.
It was so kind.
Just for you. So something else was born back in that time.
Yeah?
Tang.
Oh my gosh, that stuff was terrible.
Yeah,
but well, we loved it.
Absolutely. In my family, we stopped drinking Florida orange juice. We all wanted Tang. Yeah. I think it was a mixture of sugar and chemicals, but it didn't matter. It was technology.
That's right. So it worked.
Yep. So some of the other exciting things going on in technology, you know, back in the day, TV turned from black and white to vibrant color. I remember my favorite show, which had been Gigantor, about a robot, was in black and white. And then we moved over to Johnny Quest, which was in vibrant color. You know, coincidentally, Johnny Quest was also about scientists exploring the world.
Yeah. You know, interstates were also being built back then to connect all the cities and states to each other.
Yeah, and you know, that didn't mean so much to me as a kid, except for one thing. It made it easier to get down to my favorite place, Disney World.
Oh yeah, you gotta love Disney.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going there and traveling to a utopian ode to technology. It was called Tomorrowland.
Oh, that place was so high tech back then.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a vision for our country's future and for the world's future. Not all that much of it has come to pass.
No. So it sounds like pretty much everything was good back then. Maybe if we could just return to that, we'd make America great again.
Well, not so fast. I mean, my childhood and young adulthood were, you know, as I see it now, were colored by privilege. Mm-hmm. I mean, the country has actually never lived up to its promise, you know, of liberty and justice for all. When we think about what happened with Native Americans during the colonization of our country, racial injustice and slavery, we never really have completed our transition from the legacy of slavery. And right. Actually, I think our country was built on slaves.
You're right. We haven't made any reparations, really.
Oh, well, we've made some progress, but we're still not there. Oh. Anyway, in terms of gay rights, you remember gay people were still viewed as what? Psychological disorder, right?
Right. They were in the DSM manual, or we were in the DSM manual. But within the last 5 years, we've now gotten the right to marry.
Yeah, which we did right here at our place in Beaufort.
And we had a lot of you guys there, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for all the support.
Best memories ever.
Absolutely. So another area where the U.S. has not lived up to its promise is in women's rights. I mean, we still haven't passed the ERA.
That's just crazy. You know, with all this negativity, I guess it's probably still pretty hard to call yourself a patriot.
Well, again, not entirely. There's good and bad to all of this, right?
Yeah.
So some trends in the 60s and 70s were moving our country toward its promise of liberty, equality, and opportunity. I mean, economic prosperity for the country overall and growth of the middle class, those were kind of the order of the day. And did you know that incarceration rates were low, even if not fair? Back in the late 1970s, we only had about 200,000 inmates in combined state and federal prison.
Really? That seems low compared to the obnoxious number we have now.
Yeah, well, now we're at 2.2 million, which is the highest rate in the world. And all this was before the war on drugs and the privatization of the prison system.
Got to make a buck where you can, apparently.
Yeah, afraid so. So, social safety net, that was being expanded. And, women were making headway in the workplace and the sports world. I remember there were no boundaries put on my aspirations and goals. My family was pretty supportive.
Yeah, I remember Billie Jean King was coming into her right back then.
Yeah, she was fighting for better pay for women athletes, specifically tennis players. I remember the Battle of the Sexes. That was a really big deal.
Amazing.
That great tennis match. So also in terms of social changes, remember, in distant cities, the civil rights movement was forcing change. I mean, not without violence, but still there was progress being made.
Yeah. We also had expanded immigration opportunities.
Yeah, the Immigration and Nationalization Act, that was important. It opened the doors to our country for people who were not from Western countries.
Yeah.
Of course, all of that was before the immigrant explosion of the 80s, which was in large part due to American anti-communism policy in Central America.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about economic impact and social impact and things like that. The one thing we haven't talked about is the environment. What do you remember from those times?
Well, it's not so much remembering as studying after the fact. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But in terms of the environment, the EPA was founded, and that was a bipartisan issue. It's sad to say that these days it's become highly partisan, but the EPA was founded under President Nixon. Yeah, I mean, part of that was in reaction to a book called Silent Spring, which was published in 1962 and inspired people to care about the environment.
That was the one about DDT, right?
Yeah, among other things, DDT. Yeah.
And then Joni Mitchell put it in a song, Big Yellow Taxi. Remember that one?
I do. Hey, farmer, farmer, put away the DDT now. Give me spots on my apples, but leave me the birds and the bees, please.
Now, I know Anna's not going to hire us, but wouldn't you like the road trip with us? I mean, we could do this for hours.
We know all that stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately for everybody in the car.
So, among other things, we saw the First Amendment guarantee of free speech and free assembly in action. And I'd have to say that that was evident in anti-Vietnam protests. Again, those were not without suppression and trouble, but we did continue to move forward in our fight for things that were more equitable.
True.
And in the same way, I see our current protests as a disconnect between our promise and reality. I really think that we need to face our history and our mistakes and learn and build our country's future to represent those values that were in our founding documents.
Yeah, my hero, Dr. Maya Angelou, had a phrase she used to say. It was something like, when you learn better, you do better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, in many ways at that point in time, I think we were heading in the right direction.
So we're heading in the right direction. Where are we now?
Well, I've mentioned a few trends that are putting pressure on Americans: technology, globalization, and the decline in buying power of middle-class wages. We've also been facing some demographic changes where the country just doesn't look the same. Some people find that threatening, which is funny in a nation of immigrants, but that's the way it seems to be. Mm-hmm. And also, I think we've had a choice. We had a choice to come together or come apart. We know that in our country's history, we have come apart in the past, and it didn't work out so well.
No.
So unfortunately, we seem to be following a similar path in, dividing Americans. So we're in a highly divisive and polarized environment.
So, yeah, I get that, but why do you think that happened? I mean,
Well, I think that we're dealing with a state of nationalism and populism. You know, the idea of America first, it sounds good, but
America first doesn't mean America first. It really has meant America only. And that's just not good for me.
no, especially since it's inward looking. And I think because our global community is so interconnected, I don't think we can go back to that anyway,
No.
protectionism, even if we wanted to. You know, there's some other problems with that. There's sort of this ideal American as somebody who was somehow born into the majority and deserving of merit and status, regardless of working for it or, you know, the other idea, American hard work just doesn't apply.
No, it doesn't seem to. It's kind of like just being born with white skin gives you certain privileges that you didn't earn.
Absolutely. And people who weren't born with white skin are somehow different and un-American. So, you know,
Shame.
we're substituting intuition for science. We're no longer pursuing knowledge. Our education system is failing us. We're worshiping symbols as a substitute for values. You know, rhetoric, buzzwords, propaganda, and disinformation. We actually have opinion on major news media masquerading as news.
Oh, yeah. Recently, a news organization went to court and decided, they said they weren't liable for actions of theirs because they were for entertainment, not news, even though news is in their name.
And everybody, you know, supposedly everybody knew that it was just entertainment. So, you know, your point, it seems like the biggest audiences are sometimes for news channels that offer no deep thought, no study, no awareness, just conversation where all opinions are equal. And by the way, they're not.
They're
An
not.
informed opinion is better. You know, I think a lot of this is happening because people are really busy.
Right.
You know, I mentioned earlier some of the pressures on the middle class. We now have dual income families where everybody feels like they have to have more and bigger.
Absolutely. Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. And, you know, another legacy from our history is racism.
Right.
It runs really deep. The 1964 Civil Rights Act changed the law, but not the culture.
Oh, no, especially in the South.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be Southern, but I'm not proud of our history on race.
Yeah, and that even extends into today. So we had Jim Crow laws, and then, you know, we had the Southern Manifesto, which opposed racial integration in the South. You know, we had the Southern Strategy, which helped Nixon get elected back in 1968. And I have to say that seems to me it's alive and well as a political force, even today.
Yeah, I can see that. So this nationalism, how exactly is that different from patriotism?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
I'm so glad you've asked me that question.
So patriotism, again, is a commitment to equality and racial equality, gender equality, and, you know, in current terms, equality even covers sexual orientation.
Oh, yeah, we just recently got the right to not be fired for being gay.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yay, Supreme Court. Other American values that I think of as being part of patriotism are a sense of community, the idea of selflessness versus self-interest. You know, it used to be that our leaders were actually interested in public service and not in greed and accumulation,
Right.
and cronyism and bullying and nepotism and all those things that are going on now. Patriotism actually, in terms of a sense of community, there's a concept now which people are referring to negatively as cancel culture. And I really think that's just another name for community responsibility in correcting bad behavior.
Yeah, somebody's got to get out there and tell folks this is not right.
Absolutely. And cancel culture is just, again, it's just a negative term for something that I think is an American value. Other things, again, we're a nation of immigrants. So why have we stopped immigration? We valued knowledge, science, and exploration. I mean, that's how we got people on the moon, and that's how we won World War II. We didn't win it by praying.
Yeah.
Another area that I think reflects American values is global leadership. I mean, we have real global problems, disease and climate change.
Absolutely. And we're withdrawing from the World Health Organization. Okay, who withdraws from the World Health Organization during a global, in other words, worldwide pandemic? I mean, that's crazy.
It does seem crazy, and it doesn't seem very community oriented. It doesn't seem like it's protecting American citizens or anyone else for that matter.
Right.
We also withdrew from the Paris Accord, which was the first multinational approach to address climate change. I don't know.
That all sounds very dangerous, actually.
Yeah, well, I think there is danger in our current approach. Political figures are using patriotic symbols and phrases as a substitute for policy. The person who's waving the biggest flag is the one we're supposed to vote for, regardless of what they're actually doing.
Yeah, that's true.
That kind of results in mindless voting. You don't have to research politicians. You don't have to understand issues. You don't have to understand our history. And you certainly don't have to understand or respect our laws.
True.
There's pressure to respect the flag rather than respecting a set of values that the flag should represent. You have to stand up during the national anthem at sporting events and demonstrate unquestioned, unwavering support for our government and its leaders, even if they're leading us in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't respect symbols are viewed as unpatriotic and, therefore viewed as un-American or other. And that leads to scapegoating, exclusion. Viewing outsiders as the problem justifies dehumanization, thugs and rapists coming across our borders.
Absolutely.
And then we even have all these things we've seen recently, calls to go back to where you came from.
Even to people who are from the US, but have a different tone of skin than you or I.
Absolutely. All of this is just, it's just a reflection of what's going on in our polarized society today. And it does not reflect American values.
No, it doesn't. So words and symbols, they're pretty powerful. I've noticed some symbols and words that we've seen lately. And one of the most powerful ones is this one. This is the one that makes me cringe to see it.
Yeah, I mean, irresponsible leadership and unquestioned loyalty, as exhibited here, they can result in intimidation and violence. I mean, why aren't our so-called conservative patriots disturbed about a KKK member carrying an American flag? That seems wrong to me.
Yeah, and it also seems wrong that our country doesn't mind the initials KKK, but the initials BLM make them crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
No.
But, another ramification of irresponsible leadership and rhetoric actually leads to intimidation and violence. I mean, look at Charlottesville. Why do we have people carrying Confederate battle flags along with American flags? And I would bet these folks call themselves patriots. Some of them are geared up for conflict. It's scary.
Yeah, they have hard helmets on and things like that. It's concerning. A mask for tear gas in the middle of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Another area was Michigan.
Now, this is a really scary slide a really scary photo because you've got people here with semi-automatic weapons, flak jackets, pistols on their sides. They're standing here on the State House stairs, just ready for battle.
Yeah, and all that was to reopen their society, reopen their society in Michigan, reopen jobs, reopen their economy, send them back to work. But the problem is that didn't cure the coronavirus. It's just spreading. And you can't have people bringing American flags to intimidate a democratically elected government. I mean, this is scary stuff. This looks like a military takeover to me.
Sure.
So, in addition to that, we also have legislation with names that actually accomplish the opposite goals.
Oh, like the Patriot Act, which has a very patriotic name, but isn't a patriotic thing.
Yeah, absolutely. after 9/11, we were so concerned about terrorism that we allowed increased surveillance of Americans, which definitely violates our right to privacy. These types of actions and like we see in Michigan, Charlottesville, et cetera, and legislative actions, they're more dangerous during times of war and emergency, like now.
Absolutely.
We are, as part of this approach of looking inwardly, we're failing to address the critical issues of our time, like climate change and population growth with its impact on supplies of food and fresh water and disease.
Oh, like coronavirus. So
Yeah.
this is really dangerous. And I'm wondering, are we really going to let the conservative right-wing politicians steal our country and our patriotism?
Well, I don't think we can. I think we absolutely, I think we have to recommit to what we already do. I think we have to commit to our social action, show up at protests. I think we need to spread knowledge, and I think we need to support informed journalism by subscribing to our free and independent press through paid subscriptions. Any idiot can put up a website can put up a website to push out their opinion.
Sure.
And all opinions, like I said before, are not the same.
Right.
So we can contact politicians and hold them accountable for policy, not rhetoric.
Right. And the most powerful tool we have, of course, is the vote.
Absolutely. We can vote. We can also show people that we're supporting candidates who promote American values. For too long, those of us who are more socially conscious have been, intimidated into silence, certainly in our state.
Absolutely.
So a few other things we can do.
Oh yeah, you can have a coming out as a patriot.
Yes, that would be our second coming out, right?
Yeah, I think we should all come out as patriots, and we can reclaim our symbols.
Yeah, definitely. We could carry an American flag at social action events. I know this doesn't help much, but I've started using the flag icon on my Facebook debates with ultra conservatives. It makes me feel better anyway.
Yeah, I bet they love that.
Yeah.
There's a phrase that I would like to get going, and that is thoughtful patriot. In other words, somebody who's really taken the time to learn about patriotism, what it stands for, like you have.
Yeah, well, thoughtful patriot would work. It's not just knee-jerk patriotism, it's deep understanding and acting in a way that reflects American values.
Absolutely.
So, something else is we're interested in ideas from the congregation. So I think we're going to be talking a little bit about that after the service.
Great.
So there are some positive changes underway, like we talked about before, and some people who are exemplifying that, reclaiming our symbols.
Like Bubba Wallace with NASCAR.
Yeah, NASCAR now prohibits Confederate flags on their, as on the grounds. And another thing that was really exciting was how NASCAR responded to the news.
Oh yeah, that was great.
You saw where the other drivers and crews walked out with Bubba Wallace's car. It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, who would have ever thought that the Confederate flag would get removed from NASCAR by an African-American or mixed race person, named Bubba?
Yeah, who would have thought?
I'm so surprised and pleased. There's also another hero.
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick. After 4 years, recently, the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, released a statement saying, "We were wrong for not listening to the players and encouraging peaceful protest." That hasn't changed Colin's ability to go back to the NFL, but he started something that was powerful and has resulted in change.
He did, of course, yeah.
And of course, recent diverse support for the Black Lives Matter movement in response to police brutality has been impressive. There are a lot more white people marching in these or aiding in the protests today.
Yes, that's a good thing.
So, we've talked about a lot of things. UUs tend to be well-read and well-informed. We tend to look at content over form or symbols. We look at ideas. A majority of Americans today are invested in symbols as a shorthand for values. And remember, these folks are busy. So they just tend to look for the people who appear to be the most patriotic. Some of these folks will have trouble voting for candidates or supporting movements that won't stake a claim to patriotism. You know, words and symbols matter. You cannot allow groups who promote hate and divisiveness to own American symbols.
That's true. If we don't reclaim the symbols, we'll lose them.
Absolutely.
Here's my favorite new symbol. It's "We the People" means everyone. And it's on a flag, an American flag done in rainbow colors with fist raised of every skin tone or representing every skin tone, and even rainbow fist and red, white, and blue fist.
Yeah. You know, one symbol that I've wanted to co-opt is that "Don't Tread on Me" flag. I want to put a pink background on it and use it to support a woman's right to choose.
There you go.
That's true freedom.
Right. And here's your favorite symbol.
Yeah, I've always had the Statue of Liberty has a near and dear place in my heart. You know, especially given that I grew up in that area. The idea of "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Again, most of us came from somewhere else, and this really speaks to the importance of our great experiment.
Absolutely. And then we've recently captured our own image on a mostly full moon night around the 4th of July on our beach.
Yeah, it was a pretty special time. And I have to say that seeing that flag flying in that beautiful setting, it did make me proud to be an American. We have work to do, but let's start by reclaiming our symbols and being patriots.
Absolutely. Well, Robin, that's about all the time we have. I appreciate you stopping by, and I appreciate all the information. Thanks for joining me.
Sure, pleasure. Thank you.